I'm really excited to be here to talk a little bit about my experiences with consent and copyright. As I mentioned earlier, I work on a project called AREPR for short, the Emergency Response Archive of Puerto Rico. And that really focuses on events that have happened since 2017. It really started with Hurricanes Irma and Maria in 2017, but we expanded it to include the spate of the earthquake swarm in 2019 that went on for many years, as well as COVID-19. And the goal with this project was to talk to individuals who were not traditionally having their materials or experiences represented in museums or archives or libraries. And so we've been working largely with nonprofit community groups on the ground who have been implementing different strategies to make sure people can stay afloat and survive in the wake of these events. One of the really important things for us has been the idea of witnessing or making sure that these voices feel heard. Most of our participants have said they felt like their experiences were ignored, downplayed, and that colonial narratives really dominated the mainstream media, um, largely displaying Puerto Rico as a place that can't take care of itself, when in fact, many of these on the ground groups were vital and to survival and have done incredible work ensuring the long-term health of their communities in the wake of both federal and local government failures. So, um, one of the big things we do in this project is collect oral histories about these experiences, but we recognize that they are, coming from a site that's twice colonized, that they include traumatic experiences for our participants. And so we really try to make sure that we live out a specific set of values that we then implement into our consent form, which is why I'm starting with these here. So we call our approach participatory by design, but what it really means is that our participants have the maximum amount of decisions in the process of participating in our project. And so they can choose to participate and then later revoke their consent. They can choose to share some things, but not others. They can choose to embargo their materials. We did have one participant who was being politically targeted. So that person did embargo their materials. And we are actually just waiting until a moment when they feel like they're not as politically targeted to release them. So that is essentially why we've developed this particular philosophy to be responsive to the needs of our partners and to recognize that traditionally academics have come in and taken information and then, given nothing back and just walked away. And so this is a process where we're constantly re-engaging with them. We're constantly updating our conversations to ask, okay, are you still okay with your information being shared? Are there new ways we can think about sharing it? And you can see it on the slide, but we think this is both feminist and decolonial in praxis because we're not suggesting one group has more specialty or knowledge or expertise than the other. We view our team as non-hierarchical and we're explicitly not extracting, but we're only utilizing things that our community groups want us to use. And then the minute they no longer want those shared in that way, we then remove them. And that's essentially a form of archival practice called post-custodial. And that's really deeply embedded into our consent forms. So I bring this up. If you're not familiar with post-custodial practice, it essentially means that the person who provides the material retains ownership over it, and that our community archive becomes a steward of it. And so just providing extra reassurance to them that they retain the rights to their materials. And this looks a little bit unusual if you haven't heard of it before. So, say a photo of me were to be included in the archive, I would actually be considered the owner of that photo, even though I didn't probably take the photo myself because it's my image being represented. And we wanted our participants to feel like they had control over how they're represented. And the same is true with oral history. So, if I'm the one sharing my story, I'm the owner of that oral history. So I'm actually going to pull up. Are you still able to see my screen? Our consent form to talk about how we then apply some of those values here. So you can see here we have a note that says, We, the archive, do not own any license or title to intellectual property. We serve as a custodian. So that's how we live out our post-custodial values there. And then we provide the following four options to our participants. So to archive and publish to the web, to edit materials for the sake of scholarship or promotion. So that's our most expansive. That's essentially our use our content as you see fit, as long as it advances the aims of this particular project. The second one is to archive my interview, not make it publicly accessible on the web. I previously was at another institution at the start of this project, Michigan State. So the original plan was to have an on-site archive there. I recently, well, I will say, we ended up moving back from that particular decision because the management of our on-site archive changed, and that new manager no longer agreed to follow this post-custodial practice. And so we decided to withdraw from that particular practice. But I recently moved to a new institution, so I'm hoping to set something up here for that work. The third is to archive my interview for an embargo period of 5 years, after which it'll be made publicly available. We have been a bit flexible on this. So, like I said, we have a participant who's politically targeted. So, we do kind of just keep going back and forth. We see him regularly, about 3 to 4 times a year on our visits, and we just check in. So, we're not as rigid with the 5 years, but this just kind of tells our team that's in process of storing materials, kind of just leave it in that spot for quite a long time, and then we'll come back to it when we can. And then the last one is to archive for embargo and only make it available to researchers on site. Um, so part of the reason we have all these options is we want our participants to feel as comfortable as possible and to get to make their own decision, as I said, like maximize their decisions for how to engage with the interview. Um, and we also have this clause here as we're conducting an oral history, and we talk through it with each of our participants that they can withdraw at any time, including in the middle of an interview, at the start of an interview, at any moment in time. Um, and we especially find this important as often some of our participants are sharing very traumatic experiences of living through a particular crisis. And so we know that that can be hard, and we don't want to do anything to awaken that trauma in a way that is not helpful or not useful. And so we also provide some mental health resources on site about local, low cost, or free options in that vicinity. And then the last thing you'll see on here, we just right now, due to things like IRB and just for the sake of simplifying our work, we only interview individuals for above 18 years of age. Um, but we have gotten one request for a child who received a lot of aid and helped start up a ping pong clinic at a local community center for neighborhood kids. So we are kind of starting to see if we might expand that a little bit. And then you can see down here, I only redacted contact info because this is the publicly facing version of this form. But normally I'd have my phone number and my email, as well as my project manager's phone number and email. So individuals can contact us at any time. And then we also regularly check in with them because we also have their contact information. And then the only other thing I'll add is usually this is a two-sided document. And because my project specifically is in Puerto Rico, one side is in English and one side is in Spanish. And so we allow individuals to flip to whatever side they're most comfortable filling out. And then that has really facilitated our ability to kind of share and communicate clearly what our intent is for the content.